Hello ladies and gentlemen and everyone beyond. I am BabyNoobCakes and this is Twitch Prime free game reviews. And in this episode, we're going to be taking a look at two of the June 2020 free games, Forsaken Remastered and Mad Tracks. And yes, I am combining two games into one video, but do they have anything to do with one another? No! And I'll tell you right now, that's not a good sign for them. But now, let's attempt to answer the question, as one of the free games of the month, were they worth it? Mechanics. Forsaken is a three-dimensional movement first-person shooter, with lots and lots of different guns and missiles that you can pick up and equip. You are a treasure hunter, gathering gold, and you have to fight off other hunters also after the treasure. The enemy AI doesn't actually pick up any of the gold, but that's the idea anyway, but they are trying to kill you. Art style. The original game came out 22 years ago, in 1998, and the graphics did not receive any sort of update in this remastered version. At least not that I could tell. They're fine for a 2 decades old game, and they do display in high resolution, but that doesn't mean they look good. They're super blocky and really unimpressive by today's standards. Sound. This soundtrack is pretty good. It's got some bumpin' 90s techno, and the sound effects, while dated in their overall quality, are satisfying for the most part. Narrative. The story here is not very in-depth, as was pretty standard for games from this time period, but it does have a really neat intro cinematic that shows the Earth falling to a planet-wide catastrophe and becoming uninhabitable. That's why all the treasure hunters have descended, in order to pick it clean of any and all resources. You progress through various facilities and underground tunnel systems in order to scrounge up as much treasure and firepower that you can.
Future has become forsaken.
Replayability. You can expect to spend around 9 hours to beat the campaign, spread across 15 levels, and with the option of 4 different difficulties. However, I only wound up playing about 30 minutes, and in this next section, I will tell you why. My opinion. I could not finish this game. I could barely even get started. And I'm sorry to any fans of this game, but I just can't recommend it. First off, I don't get motion sick from video games. Ever. I've played Portal, I've played Mirror's Edge, I've played Rock Band and Guitar Hero until my eyes bled. Well, not literally. But I've never actually felt any sort of nauseous feeling. I can read books in a car, for crying out loud. But just a few minutes of playing this game had me pausing to do some deep breathing. It's mainly because the game reorients your view every time you look up or down to a certain point, and it has like a head-snapping effect to it. It felt like it was giving me whiplash. But after a few times of this happening, enough was enough. I also didn't have a super fun time actually playing the game. It felt like it had a pretty steep learning curve as far as the 3D controls go, in being able to maneuver around and actually avoid being shot. And to add to this, the rooms gave you very little cover, so the only option you ever had was to move frantically around the room in hopes of avoiding damage. And while you can see or anticipate most of the bullets that the enemies are shooting your way, there were multiple times where I couldn't figure out what was hitting me. I knew who was hitting me, it was the enemies in front of me, but I couldn't tell what it was. So I stopped moving and shooting, just to see, and no joke, here is what was hitting me. Nearly invisible, super fast moving bullets from these particular enemies right here. Glorious. Also, when I found this enemy, it cost me multiple lives, and the AI on it was incredibly stacked against you and seemed to mimic your movements just enough to always be out of the way of your incredibly slow-moving bullets. And it was tiny, and it had loads of health. I just wasn't having any fun. The game was challenging, and I usually enjoy a challenge, but it felt like there was so little payoff that it just wasn't worth it. In my research, I also found out in the original game that there were AI bots that would help you on your campaign, but in this remaster, they were scrapped in favor of multiplayer. And playing this one solo now, I have to say, is just not very enjoyable. But now let's pivot over to the other game in this review, Mad Tracks. Mechanics. This is a racing game based on pullback friction toy cars, which when I saw this I thought that would be cool to have some sort of like pullback mechanic where every single racer kind of had to like stop and decide how much time they were going to spend pulling back their car in order to get more time out of their movement, or spend less time in order to get back on the track and racing again really quickly. That's not what this is. And I was severely disappointed, because all it really boils down to is that you can't hold down the accelerator. That's it. The more you hold down the accelerator, the more the spring compresses, and if you hold it down too long, it slows you down. So you have to let go of the accelerator all the time. You have to let the spring unwind, as it were. Anyway, you can do races and minigames, but there is no multiplayer. And the AI for all of this is either too good or too stupid. No in between. There are also pickups like rockets and boosters to help you fight against your opponents, but they'll often miss, the enemy can barely use them correctly, or, again, they use them too well, and they're just not that good, and they just never do what you want them to do. Art style. The graphics are pretty lazy for the most part. For a game that came out in 2018, it shows that the team was on a very small budget, or just didn't care. The settings themselves are pretty decent, being plastic car tracks draped over tables and dressers in a kid's room full of other toys. That small attention to detail is actually probably my favorite part of the game, which makes it sound pretty bad. And it is! Sound. There is a soundtrack, but just like the overall graphics, it is nothing special. And for me, the sound effects in the game are grating and detract more from the experience than add to it. Replayability. To complete all of the courses in the game, it should take you around 3.5 hours, or more if you're attempting to get gold medals on all of them. But overall, replayability is hurt considerably by the fact that there is no multiplayer, which is bad enough, but almost all of the minigames and races are locked at the beginning of the game, and you have to go through this convoluted adventure mode to even start to play anything. It forces you to get first, second, or third place on any one game before unlocking the next. And there is an arcade mode where you can just play singular minigames. But you can already do that from the adventure mode, and again, you have to unlock them in the adventure mode before playing them here anyway. So there is no point to arcade mode. There's also a battle mode, but again, this is something you need to unlock. So I didn't even wind up finding out what this game mode even was, because I just couldn't put forth the effort in order to find the secret hidden item or whatever that unlocks it. My opinion. As if I haven't given enough of it already. The cars don't control well, the driving mechanics are kind of busted, as I couldn't ever tell a difference between the different cars you could choose, and for a game that wants so badly to be Mario Kart and Mario Party, it misses the mark by so much. The minigames are either too easy or impossible to win, and that's not to mention that they're not even that fun for the most part. No multiplayer in what is essentially a party game, confusing unlock paths that are explained poorly, if at all, and to top it all off, I'm gonna go back to my first complaint, the cars don't control well in a driving game. I gave this game a chance, but in the end it was a real waste of time. But now, for the moment of truth, was it worth it? No! These two games are not worth it. Both are clearly shovelware budget titles in today's gaming environment. Forsaken may have at one time been a pretty good game, but this remastering seems to have done almost nothing to improve that, other than adding in a few new levels and combining the two old versions of the game. And I guess if you don't get motion sick from it, or if maybe it's an old favorite of yours from back in the day, you'll probably end up getting a lot of enjoyment out of it. But for most people, I would say steer clear of this one. As for Mad Tracks, even if I needed to distract a young child with a game for a while, I would 100% pick something else. Because even the youngest of children would call me out for giving them a bullshit game that was a waste of their time and energy. It is unplayable, or at the very most, an unenjoyable mess of a game. And both of these games are not worth a spot as one of our free games from Twitch Prime. But maybe that's for you to decide. Whether you agree or disagree with my judgment, get at me in the comments. Let me know what you think of these two games, and let's discuss if they were worth it or not. Also, don't forget to go to the Twitch app and download your free games every month, because hey, they're free, and sometimes, you will end up with a few gems. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please comment, like, and subscribe, because I take a look at the Twitch Prime free games every month. But for now, I'll catch you later.